Okay, get ready for this because we're about to dive into a story where brand new, cutting edge technology peels back the layers of time to reveal a scientific treasure that's been lost for over 2,000 years. This isn't just about some dusty old manuscript, it's about the ghost of an idea, preserved in nothing more than the faintest traces of ink. Just picture that scene for a second. We're not in some ancient library. We're in a high-tech particle accelerator lab. And in that lab, a voice that's been silent for centuries is finally speaking again. And those bright orange squiggles on the screen, they're the key to unlocking a massive scientific cold case. And that really brings us to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? At the center of all this is a single, pretty unassuming book. On the surface, it's just a collection of religious texts. But underneath all that, it's hiding a secret map of the heavens. So how is that even possible? Well, to understand that, we've got to look at the object itself. And trust me, the strange way it was made is key to the whole story. So this is it, the Codex Clementiae Rescriptus. And for centuries, that's literally all anyone thought it was, a collection of Christian monastic writings copied down by a scribe more than 1,000 years ago. It was found in this incredibly remote monastery out in the Sinai Desert. Exactly the kind of place where history goes to hide. But here's the twist. It's not just any old book. It's something called a palimpsest. The whole idea here is basically recycling. See, in the ancient world, parchment, made from animal hide, was incredibly valuable, super expensive. You would never, ever just throw it away. So here's how it worked, right? First, an original text is written down. Then, maybe centuries later, a scribe gets that same piece of parchment, scrapes the old ink off as best they can, and then just writes something totally new right over the top. That old text becomes this faint, invisible ghost hiding just beneath the surface. And that ghost? Well, that's exactly what we're hunting for. So the big question is, who was the author of this ghost text? Who's the original writer? Well, it turns out we're talking about one of the absolute giants of ancient science. Let me introduce you to Hipparchus. This guy was working way back around 150 BC. We're talking centuries before Ptolemy, and long, long before names like Copernicus or Galileo came on the scene. He was this incredibly meticulous observer, doing most of his work from the Greek island of Rhodes, and he basically changed the game when it came to mapping the stars. And the stuff he accomplished? It's just staggering. He's basically considered the father of trigonometry. He discovered the precession of the equinoxes, that super slow wobble that the Earth's axis does over thousands of years. He calculated the length of the year and the distance to the moon with a precision that is just mind-blowing for his time. But here's the real kicker. Almost all of his original work, at least 14 books, was completely lost to history, vanished. And of all his lost works, there was one in particular that was considered the holy grail of ancient astronomy. He created the very first comprehensive star catalog of the Western world. And we're not just talking about connecting the dots to make constellations. No way. He was systematically recording the precise mathematical coordinates of the stars, using a system like latitude and longitude to map the entire sky. It was a total game changer. And how many stars did he map? Around 850. Just think about that for a second. Mapping the heavens with nothing but your naked eye and some pretty basic instruments, creating this massive scientific data set completely from scratch. It's just unbelievable. For over 2,000 years, this catalog was gone. We only knew about it because other ancient writers mentioned it. This was a foundational text of science, and it had simply vanished. Or so we thought. Until now. So, how on earth did they finally find it? Well, for that, we have to go back to where our stories started. Back to the lab, to the SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory, where modern physics came face to face with ancient parchment. The secret weapon here was a technique called X-ray fluorescence. What that basically means is that researchers took these fragile ancient pages and blasted them with a super focused, really high-intensity beam of X-rays. See, even though the ink was scraped away, tiny little chemical traces from the original ink recipe, stuff like iron and calcium, had soaked deep into the parchment. And these X-rays, which are about 1,000,000 times stronger than what you get at the dentist's office, hit those tiny chemical leftovers and made them light up or fluoresce. And just like that, the ghost text hiding underneath was revealed. Okay, so the moment of truth. What did they actually find? What did this ghost from 2,200 years ago really have to say? They found it. Not the whole catalog, but a definitive, undeniable fragment. The text contained the precise coordinates for stars in the constellation Corona Borealis, also known as the Northern Crown. It gave their positions in length and breadth, using his very specific coordinate system. This was the smoking gun. This was the fingerprint of Hipparchus. But this is where the story goes from just incredible to absolutely mind-blowing. The researchers did something brilliant. They checked Hipparchus's ancient coordinates against where modern astronomy tells us the stars actually were in his time, just to measure his accuracy. And get this, his measurements were accurate to within 1 degree. 1 degree. That kind of precision, using ancient instruments from over 2,000 years ago, is just phenomenal. It confirms his status as perhaps the greatest observational astronomer of the entire ancient world. Now, this discovery also helps settle a huge, long-running historical debate. For centuries, many scholars have suspected that the later, more famous astronomer Ptolemy just stole Hipparchus's data for his own star catalog. But these new fragments showed that, well, the real story's a little more complicated than that. And this really matters because it changes how we see the very progress of science in the ancient world. As the historian Victor Geisenberg, one of the study's authors, puts it, it wasn't plagiarism, it was science. Ptolemy definitely used Hipparchus's data, for sure, but he also combined it with other sources and added his own observations. He was building on the work of those who came before him, which, when you think about it, is exactly how science is supposed to work. So let's just zoom out for a second and think about the bigger picture, because this is about so much more than just finding an old star map. This discovery is an incredible reminder that all of our knowledge today is built on layers and layers of forgotten work. It shows us how even a text that was physically erased can survive and come back to literally rewrite history. And it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other lost voices are still out there, waiting in the ghosts of old parchments for the right technology to finally bring them back to life?